my piano over here. If you're wondering why there's a piano in the background. So today my topic is about senses. I think your teachers have talked about senses because there's something really easy to learn about. For example, your nose, your eyes, those can all make sense. But for animals, they're all different. They have different senses. And for example, underwater dwellers or hole diggers, they don't really need eyesight. So they might have stronger senses than us, but they might lack of eyesight. So that might be one thing that animals lack of. So some, they have extra senses. Some animals have extra senses. I'm going to talk about that in another fact, but that's also going to be interesting. So I'm going to talk about sight first and how different animals have a different unique sight. And I'll talk about taste, the smell, the touch, the hearing, and extra senses. But to get you started, I'm going to start you out with a wow fact. So wow facts are really interesting. So I'm going to talk about, this is a small wow fact. So in polar bear, they can sense a dead seal or any dead animal in clear Arctic air that's 3 miles away. So that's like a lot distance. So imagine if you could smell a pizza from 3 miles away. You would be really, 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 it would be really unique, and you would be really unique. So I don't think most people can do that. So that's one example of how polar bears have better smell than us. But I'm going to talk about sight now. So our eyes see all the colors of the rainbow, but we don't see all the kinds of light and all the kinds of energy. For example, we can't see ultraviolet light. That's kind of shorter than normal light waves. So, for example, if you were a butterfly, you could see ultraviolet light. So if you go to the Cleveland Museum, for example, my sisters, they went on a VR experience, and then we had a butterfly VR experience, and then when you go, there is a button and you can see ultraviolet stuff when you're on your VR experience. So that's why there's ultraviolet light for an option. That's kind of cool because you can see pollen with it or other bugs and stuff. So that's one kind of animal that can see ultraviolet light. And that's one example that you could see. So if you actually go to the Cleveland Science Museum, you can go to the VR experience, the butterfly one, to see the ultraviolet light. But otherwise, other mammals, they can also see ultraviolet light, but only some cannot, but I think most can. So for bugs, you see this bug over here. So this is a close-up image of a bug, and you see there's kind of prisms in eyes of the bugs. So if you zoom in a microscope, you might see prisms on the eyes of bugs. So that actually can detect motion, but even though it's really prism-like and not what we see, it can actually detect a lot of motion. So that's kind of cool too. Even if it can't detect ultraviolet light, it's still cool to detect motion. So now I'm going to talk about taste. So most vertebrates, which have backbones, they have a tongue or they can taste, and then it's really easy because the tongue is one of the organs. You can use it to taste a lot of stuff, and you can make sure if something tastes bad or tastes good, because the tongue has taste buds. So sometimes when you taste something really sour, your taste buds, they react to it, and the sour taste buds tell you that it's sour. So right here, it's a lion. So the lion, they also use their tongues to eat, and then they not only can taste help you, but they can also tell you if any food is contaminated or not. So that means if any food is polluted, or if it's bad, or it's gone rotten. So we also use our tongues so we can taste really easily, and also we can lick food out of stuff like ice cream. So right here, the lion, it can eat like any single scrap out of this big bowl because it has the long tongue, so it can adapt by using that. So that's kind of cool because we can manipulate food with our tongue, which means we can move our tongue muscles around, and we have actually more than 3 muscles in our tongue. So there's at least like 5. So that's a lot of tongue muscles. If you think about it, your tongue is really flexible, but you probably wouldn't think there's muscles in them. So now I'm going to talk about smell. So right here is a dog. So we used to have a dog, and it was a beagle. So beagles, they're like bloodhounds, so they can smell a lot. But if you had a dog, they could sense visitors all the way from the door. Like our dog, our beagle, it could, when any visitors arrived, even in our car, and we didn't even open the door yet, and my beagle was far away from the doorway, he could still sense it, and he would run up to the door. So that's kind of one example of how smells are really good for dogs. And do you see this long part of the nose right here? That makes it more space for smell detectors, so they can smell more stuff because they have a whole space over here, so they can fit more smell detectors or smell cells. So that's why if you have a dog, maybe you're wondering why can it smell so well. It's probably because of its nose. Its nose, it can kind of sense a lot of stuff, and it has a bigger nose. See, our part of our nose, it's only this part of our nose, but a dog, it's longer, so that means it has more space for smell cells. So that can make a dog smell 100,000 times better than ours. So how many smell cells we actually have only 5 million. That's a lot. But dogs, they can have more than 200 million smell cells. That's a lot more than ours. But it's more than 200 million smell cells. So that's why some breeds, if you breed some dogs together and they both are really good at smelling, they will probably become a better dog at smelling. So now I'm going to talk about the touch. So many animals, they need the touch sense so they can approach up, or you see this mole right here. So moles, they have a lack of sight, so they need to use touch. So right here, you see these nose fingers, whatever you call them. Those are just for you can touch stuff with them, and then it helps them when they dig holes underground because they have a lack of eyesight. So when you dig tunnels underground, it's really dark. So that's why they have a lack of eyesight, because they already adapted to what they are like, but they have these tiny whiskers or whatever they are over here, so they can sense a lot of other stuff. So these are actually really sensitive, so that's why they also really need these. So you need smell cells because you need to sense a lot of other stuff around you, touch smells. You can sense a lot of stuff around you, and like when you touch stuff, you can easily feel it. So other animals, they might have better touch sense than you do. So for example, like a cat. So imagine if you had a cat, and the cat, it might have a sense of pressure that is going to change because its whiskers, they're actually extra sensitive to other stuff. So for example, if a cat reacts to a tornado or any other thing inside the atmosphere, or the pressure, it has changed, like an earthquake, it's probably because it senses that the pressure has changed. Because they're extra sensitive whiskers, they're extra sensitive, and they can know if there's a twitch of pressure that has changed. So that's why cats or dogs, they have extra sensitive whiskers or any other things like that, so they can sense bad weather before. So now I'm going to talk about hearing. So bats can fly their way through night because they can hear really well. You see right here, they have 2 big ears. They might be even bigger than their face. So those big ears, they can help when they send echolocation. So at school, you probably have learned this, but echolocation, you can send a high-pitched wave out that's ultrasonic, and then when it hits something, it'll send back. And those ears come in handy because when they send the echo back, it might be so faint. So they use the big ears to detect it. That's how they can hunt in the dark. So some animals have echolocation, but it's really handy to have those ears so you can hear the other senses in echolocation. So that actually even helps know that what is the size of the animal, what is the exact distance, and what is the length of it, or whatever you need to measure it. So the bats, they would know exactly what the animal is that they're detecting because they can sense with their ears how big it is and what is the distance of it. So if you think of bats, you might think that when they send their signal, they probably don't know what their animal that they detect is, but they actually do because of their echolocation. So now I'm going to talk about extra senses. So we only think about the 5 senses: the smell, the hearing, the eyes, the touch, and also the taste. So we only think about those, but some animals actually have extra senses that we don't have. So we use the 5 senses to rely on, but other animals might use maybe a 6th sense. So for example, a pit viper. So a pit viper, it actually has a heat sense, so it can sense heat with its eyes. So they actually have something called pit organs right under their eyes, like over here, and then that detects heat. It absorbs the infrared light or the really hot objects, and then you can tell what animal there is by the body heat. So that's why pit vipers, they're really good at hunting, because when they see a bunny, to them it would be really hot because it's a living being. So when they see it, it's really hot. So when the other parts of it is dark, then there would be an animal that would be really light, because that's how it works, and it's like the energy that's vibrating off. So also, sharks are actually have an extra sense, and they have a sense of electricity. So if you ever think of when you go diving down, they might jump at your camera because that's electrical. So they can have an electric sense, especially hammerheads. So hammerheads right here, they underside, they have electric detectors, and then they could detect electricity from like humans or other fish. So that could help them hunt too. But it's especially hammerheads that have this sense. So that's kind of cool how there's the extra senses that can help. And then my conclusion about this topic, I think it's really good because we think of the 5 senses, but other animals, they also might have 5 senses or extra senses, but they might have better sight because they might have a different kind of eye parts. They might see ultraviolet light, or they might see motion, which is pretty cool. And also, I learned about how taste, it works a lot when other animals, they eat and then they find out if something is rotten or contaminated. But they can also taste if something is good or not. And then for smell, I learned about dogs. They have a longer nose, so they have more smell detectors inside their nose. So I never knew this because I never knew how dogs could smell more, but now it really makes sense that they have a longer nose, so that's why they could smell more. Also, I think touch for hairy moles, they have a lack of sense. A lack of sight, so they need their sense so they can detect stuff around them. And I learned about how bats hear, and then they can use echolocation, and then they know when they send their waves out, they know when it comes back and how big the animal is. So that is kind of cool too, because they know what they're sensing. And it's kind of cool how animals have extra senses. So extra senses, we think there's 5 senses, but some animals might have 6 senses or more. So they actually might rely on these the most, but we rely on our 5 senses the most. And I like how you guys listen to my topic. I think this topic is really good. And please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please comment, and thank you for listening.